Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Welcome to COV FF, and my co-host is Brother Yusuf, who will be joining us shortly. Today's podcast again is a weekly summary of the situation and the genocide that's taking place in Gaza and to the people of Palestine. And may Allah make it easy for our brothers and sisters and our young children to say who are in that conflict and who are going under horrendous conditions and barbaric treatment against them. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Of course, brothers and sisters, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Please, brothers and sisters, don't forget to like and subscribe and share the stream. And I was just doing some research just prior to going live, my dear brothers and sisters. And I just want to mention that so far in the genocide, and I really want you to comprehend this deeply. I really want you to comprehend this. Over 40,000 people have been murdered. Possibly over 10,000, not including the 40,000 that have been confirmed murdered. Over 10,000 still are under the rubble. And I was just going through some of the facts and figures. Roughly, there's about 2 million people living or in that particular area of Palestine and Gaza. 2.6% of all children are dead. 53 children die every day. Since October the 7th, 53 children die every day. 72 men and women die every day. And I was just going through some research. Out the 40,000 that have been murdered, 18.4% are women. So I really want you to comprehend this, brothers and sisters, that 40,000 people have been confirmed killed. And there are people who are still under the rubble. There are still people under the rubble. I'm not adding people who've been maimed, disabled, limbs missing, and so forth. I'm not even discussing that. So out of the 40,000 who have been confirmed murdered and killed, 18.4% are women. And I really want you to think to the next stage what I'm going to say now. How many do you think percentage are children out of the 40,000 that have been confirmed murdered by the IDF, the Zionist regime? I was shocked. 33%. 33% out of the 40,000 that have been confirmed murdered by the IDF are children. 33%. Now, I really want you to comprehend that, brothers and sisters. If this was a different country, a different location in the globe, there'll be outroar, there'll be outrage, there'll be protests, there'll be people in political power calling an end to this and to put a siege on the aggressors, to put boycott the aggressors. But the reality is, brothers and sisters, that these people are still being funded with billions and billions of pounds and dollars by the taxpayer. We are still funding this war. So if anybody who is watching lives in America, there's a famous stadium called Madison Square Garden in America, which many tournaments take place, boxing matches take place, and so forth. That particular location holds 19,500 people when it comes total. If you want to watch the state, a boxing match or basketball. So 19,500 people, an audience it would hold. So double that. And that's how many people have been confirmed, killed and murdered by the IDF, but there's still over 10,000 still under the rubble. So, brothers and sisters, I really want you to comprehend that. And we've got some people backstage. There's somebody who wants to come on and refute YUSUF. I don't know who this person is. I can always put the link in the chat if you want to come on in a short while. But all I ask is that you put your camera on backstage at least. Backstage, put your camera on, and only I can see your face. It would give me a quick wave, and then you can turn the camera off, and then you can come on and we can have a time discussion or a back and forth. But YUSUF, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Nice to see you again.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good afternoon rather from my part of the world, and good evening, good morning, whichever other part of the world you are in. Yeah, I just came in the tail end of the statistics that you are basically speaking about, not just on the aspect of proportionality, but if you're looking at the people that are dead in the rubble, and not only that, Brother Muhammad, the issue are, and I hope those people in the backstage that want to refute you and me want to come on. I don't know if we're getting these mischief makers again, but just to give, the indications in terms of what I read by Medicine Sans Frontier. They stated that, it's not just the people that are basically being murdered by Israel, and not just the people that are being killed under the rubble, but if you take into account conventional diseases, heart ailments, cancer, the common flu virus, and now you've got the introduction of poliomyelitis, all as a result of Israel in Gaza. Imagine that situation where, as a result of just ordinary diseases, which under normal circumstances, people basically suffer and die, even with the best medical treatment. Imagine the situation in Gaza tenfold, just leaving aside the people that are brutally murdered and massacred by Israel, and leaving aside the fact the people that are buried under the rubble. Look at the existing condition for the mortality rate pertaining to existing diseases. I mean, women now who are undergoing cesarean sections, we've seen the reports that they are being cut open without anesthetic. Cesarean section under normal circumstances is not the most easiest thing. And women after such a procedure end up staying 3-4 days in the hospital. These people have to get up, undergo the cesarean in the morning and leave in the afternoon without anesthetic. Imagine that situation. But I want to share something for you and for some of these people out there who want to hear. I've just presented something. If this could be shared with you. Yeah, here's it here. This is a new report. I want the people out there, whoever you are, all you Israeli supporters, all you Zionist supporters, all you Netanyahu lover boys, all of you out there, people who love Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, all you satanic Israeli supporters, have a look at the new HRW report, the Human Rights Watch report on Israeli prisons, which was exposed this week, just about 3 days ago, on Democracy Now! By the fantastic Amy Goodman, which shows that Palestinian healthcare workers have been chained, starved, and sexually abused. This is this is a report. I'm gonna share the report with you, but I want you to listen to this particular news item. I'm not doing it directly from YouTube so we don't get a strike, as we've been getting strikes repeatedly, but have a look at this and just listen to what you've got. You listen for at least about 5 minutes to the shocking report.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We begin today's show with a call by Human Rights Watch for the International Criminal Court to investigate Israel for arbitrarily detaining and torturing Palestinian healthcare workers. A new report by Human Rights Watch details the harrowing experiences of 8 doctors, nurses, and paramedics who were recently held in Israeli prisons, where they describe being blindfolded, beaten, held in forced stress positions, and handcuffed for extended periods of time. They also reported torture, including rape and sexual abuse by Israeli forces. Ed Abed, a 50-year-old surgeon who was taken by Israeli forces from Beit Lahia's Indonesia hospital in November, told Human Rights Watch, quote, "Every minute we were beaten, I mean all over the body, on sensitive areas between the legs, the chest, the back, We were kicked all over the body and the face. They used the front of their boots, which had a metal tip, then their weapons. They had lighters. One soldier tried to burn me, but burned the person next to me. I told them I'm a doctor, but they didn't care, unquote. Others describe being held in metal cages and seeing other detained Palestinians beaten to death. The Human Rights Watch report also details how 36-year-old paramedic Walid Khalili was taken to the notorious Sde Tayman prison, where Israeli forces suspended him and dozens of other detainees, most of them stripped and wearing diapers, from the ceiling with chains attached to their handcuffs. Israeli forces then shocked him with electric wires. The report also referred to a Palestinian prisoner who was gang raped by Israeli soldiers using an M16 rifle. Human Rights Watch's findings track with other reports by Gaza's medical workers who've been detained by Israel since October 7th. In July, Dr. Mohammed Abu Salmea, the director of Al-Shifa Hospital, described his detention in an Israeli prison for 7 months without charge.
The torture was very severe in Israeli prisons. I am a doctor. My weight was 87 kilograms. I lost in 45 days more than 25 kilograms of my weight. I lost my balance. I lost focus. I lost all feeling. We were shackled for 45 days, handcuffed for 45 days. However you describe the suffering and insults in prison, you can never know the reality unless you lived through it.
That was Dr. Saeed Abdulrahman Maruf. For more, we're joined in Ramallah by Melina Ansari, the Israel and Palestine assistant researcher for Human Rights Watch and a lawyer. She co-authored the new Human Rights Watch report, Israel, Palestinian Healthcare Workers Tortured. Thank you very much for joining us. You're joining us from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Can you talk overall about your findings and who are all the people you talked to?
Thank you, Amy, and much appreciated for having us here. The report on the torture and detention of Palestinian healthcare workers includes 8 testimonies of Palestinian paramedics, nurses, doctors, and surgeons who currently have been working in Gaza and living in Gaza for the past 10 months during the current hostilities. Many of the doctors and the nurses, 6 of them, were detained and arrested when they were actually in the hospital doing their duties and whatever they can to make sure the Palestinians who are injured and Palestinians who need the medical care for their own survival are granted this humanitarian medical needs. So 6 of the doctors were detained during a siege on hospitals, as well as during coordinated evacuation missions from the hospitals that are in the northern area of Gaza to hospitals in the southern areas. So what I'm trying to say is clearly these healthcare workers were detained while they were doing their job, tasked, and in a situation where Palestinians in Gaza are urgently needing medical care and medical assistance. The testimonies, as you mentioned, are consistent with many other testimonies gathered by OHCHR, for example, Palestinian and Israeli human rights organizations, where it gives us a window into how Israeli authorities are treating Palestinians in detention. We were able to speak to 8 healthcare workers in order to really connect and better understand the health infrastructure in Gaza. So the detention and torture of healthcare workers at this current moment in Gaza is only exaggerating and worsening the conditions of the catastrophic health infrastructure in Gaza. So the testimonies are of torture, beatings, punches, kicks with steel-toed boots by Israeli soldiers, using military dogs to attack and intimidate detainees, but as well as using
using military dogs to attack detainees. And last week or the week before last, we spoke about normal individuals who were viewed as Hamas militants. These are doctors. These are healthcare workers. Listen to this part.
positions for prolonged period of times while being blindfolded and cuffed by the hands and feet. Many of the healthcare workers we spoke to, as healthcare workers being experts in medical knowledge, testified to us and reported seeing and witnessing and being themselves subjected to medical neglect, where they have seen detainees with visible trauma and blunt trauma on their bodies, visible bites of dogs on their bodies as well. They told us as well, from their wounds during their detention and arrest, they were not given any proper medical treatment. And when I talk about medical treatment inside detention, this is the bare minimum that's guaranteed under international humanitarian law, where the Geneva Conventions require the detaining authority to provide proper medical health care, proper monitoring of the conditions. But then we have testimonies and we have reports that talk about amputation of Palestinian limbs, including hands and feet, from prolonged cuffings, and amputations without anesthesia as well. So
imagine that amputations of the limbs of these Palestinian healthcare workers without anesthetic. And you guys out there want to have the audacity to come and defend the satanic state? I mean, is there something mentally sick and afflicted with you as a human being? Listen to her.
Sadly, this is honestly just a small example of what Human Rights Watch was able to document. But we're talking about hundreds of other cases of testimonies from either UN or Israeli human rights organizations that talk about some kind of a systematic pattern of ill treatment and abuse in detention. And really important to highlight that when we talk about these 8 healthcare workers, for example, for specific, they were not charged with any offenses. They were not brought before trial. So this is why we concluded that the detention was unlawful. They were either detained from 7 weeks up to 5 months, none of them being informed why they are being detained or for how long they are being detained. They're just experiencing ill treatment and torture at the hands of the Israeli authorities, which is again only a window into the general detention conditions of Palestinian prisoners and detainees. And currently we're talking about 9,000 Palestinians who are in Israeli custody. 3,000 of them are under administrative detention, which is detaining a person without trial, without charge for an indefinite time. And this includes hundreds of children, dozens of women as well, elderly journalists and human rights defenders. So we're really ringing the alarm about the situation inside the Israeli custody and detention facilities. And again, when we talk about military bases or detention facilities where Palestinians are detained, these cases are of Palestinians who were taken outside of Gaza. So they were forcibly deported from Gaza into detention facilities and detention military bases inside Israel. And this is considered a war crime under international humanitarian law.
Did you catch that? This is considered a war crime. These are Palestinians, and in this instance, healthcare workers taken, and what do you call this if not, hostages? These are basically this is unlawful detention. So there's basically people are talking about release hostages, 124 hostages. Most of them have been now probably murdered by Israel themselves. What about the 9,000, out of which hundreds or thousands are children? And we're not talking about just children under 18 teenagers. We're talking about children 11, 12 years old being kept in unlawful detention. 9,000 before and, of course, since October 7th. What are we going to talk about them? When are people going to talk about that?
Law of forcible deportation. And for those Palestinians who were detained inside the occupied West Bank or inside the occupied Palestinian territory have been forcibly transferred outside of their occupied territory, which is also a war crime under international humanitarian law. So the alarms are ringing, and this is why Human Rights Watch is calling for the International Criminal Court Office of the Prosecutor to ensure including the treatment of Palestinian detainees and prisoners in their open investigation into the situation in Palestine. We know that the prosecutor at the ICC requested arrest warrants for 2 Israeli senior officials as well as Hamas officials. So for the Israeli officials, they are being the arrest warrants are for war crimes and crimes against humanity. However, we did not notice that the ill treatment, the detention, and the torture of Palestinians inside Israeli detention was included during the calls or applications for arrest warrant. And we really sincerely put pressure on states and governments to also make sure that there is genuine accountability for the treatment of Palestinians inside Israeli detention. As you may know, or to really highlight this this information, that the International Committee for the Red Cross, that's mandated to monitor detention conditions in order to make sure they comply with international standards, has been banned since the start of the hostilities from monitoring Israeli prisons and detention centers, which rings the alarm and the bell.
So the International Red Cross is banned from monitoring Israeli detention facilities and military bases. Wonder why?
Even higher with regards to what exactly is happening inside detention and inside Israeli custody, because we're hearing about reports of Palestinian deaths in custody. According to Haaretz, there are 48 cases of deaths in custody since the beginning of the hostilities of Palestinians who were declared dead or have been killed inside detention. And there is no clarity to the reasons or the circumstances that led to their deaths. Physicians for Human Rights Israel was able to participate in the autopsy of 5 cases of Palestinian detainees who were pronounced dead inside the Israeli detention. And some of the cases included clear medical neglect, and others included that the deaths was a cause of torture and ill treatment. And I would just highlight that 2 cases of these deaths in custody were of Palestinian healthcare workers, like Dr. Adnan al-Bursh, who was declared by the Israeli prison services back in April killed, and as well as Dr. Iyad al-Rantisi, who was also killed during detention. So again, the bells are ringing, and there needs to be better clarity and understanding to what's happening inside detention, but also to be confident in asking the question of, why are these Palestinians inside detention when they're being detained for prolonged periods of time without being brought before a judge, or even without any charges presented against them?
So that's basically just it's a shorter piece, but Brother Muhammad, I mean, this report is absolutely shocking, and here is the I just want to share. We can discuss this. Here's the actual Human Rights Watch report. This is the Human Rights Watch report. If you can just share this on your screen, I've got it open here. This is from the Human Rights Watch website. This is dated August 26, 2024. That's just a couple of days back. Last week and the week before, we have been talking about these tortures and gang rape of Palestinians being taking place. But generally, the argument has been that, look, these are Hamas militants. Here you've got a case clearly of a situation that Palestinian healthcare workers have been detained since October 2023. So do they not have a right? When Kamala Harris, the hypocrite, speaks about bring our hostages back, what about these hostages? What about these hostages? They stated, this is a Human Rights Watch report, that they include some of the torture, humiliations, as the lady stated, beatings, forced stress positions, prolonging cuffing and blindfolding. They also report torture, including rape and sexual abuse by Israeli forces. Sexual abuse by Israeli forces. So the actual sex and the rape is not being committed by Hamas. It's being committed by Israeli forces. And when these Israeli soldiers were being arrested, what happened? There was a riot. But there wasn't a riot because rape took place. There was a riot because they were being denied the right to rape. that they have a right to rape Palestinians. These Israeli swines have a right to rape Palestinians, and so therefore there was a riot for rape to occur. This is part and parcel. One could even argue the point innate in maybe Jewish theology in the Old Testament. And so you have a situation where, from March to June 2024, this year, Human Rights Watch interviewed 8 Palestinian healthcare workers who were taken between November and December 2023, detained without charge for between 7 days and 5 months. And they've been tortured and kept in the worst of facilities. This is the entire report. In fact, Healthcare Workers Watch Palestine, an NGO, documented 259 detentions of healthcare workers and collected 31 accounts describing torture and other abuses by Israeli authorities, including the use of stress positions, deprivation of adequate food and water, threats of sexual violence and rape, and degrading treatment. And since October, over 92,000 people in Gaza have been wounded. Functional hospitals have fewer than 1,500 inpatient beds. That's for 2 million people. And the Israeli authorities have allowed only 35% of nearly 14,000 people who requested medical evacuation to leave Gaza. So they want them kept up in a coop and totally destroyed. And these reports are consistent with the UN Office of the High Commission for Human Rights, the UN Relief and Workers Agency for Palestinian Refugees, Israeli news media, all of that. Go to it where the rape took place, where in one instance they raped someone to death. The Israeli soldiers raped a Palestinian prisoner to death. You look at Iyad Abed. This is the 50-year-old surgeon. He was detained. He's from the Indonesian hospital. He says, every minute we were beaten, all over the body. They had lighters. Abed said he had broken ribs and a broken tailbone. As those who engage in sports know what a broken tailbone as a result of the physical assault by soldiers, which 2 months later still has not healed. An ambulance driver, whilst not to be named, said whilst he's being held with dozens of other men in a metal cage, he saw guards beat to death 2 men, one of whom he recognized, with metal bars. So these are criminal acts which are basically fully, complicit with what the leadership basically states. You've got women that are being raped. This is a lady, Khader Abu Nada, a 30-year-old nurse. He was basically engaged in sexual assault. They raped him with an electric stick, physically and psychologically abused him, humiliated him. In certain instances, they urinated. In the cells, water for toilets. The mattresses and blankets were thins. Water for toilets and for drinking was only available for 1 hour a day, with a disgusting stench emanating from non-flushable toilets. They gave us a bag for the garbage. We used to fill it with water and drink from it. It smelled horrible. We had no choice. They emptied tuna cans in a garbage and gave it to me. One time I saw a soldier spit in the bag. Many detainees were starving and telling me they were hungry. We got 2 meals a day. They were not even apples. They gave us food just to survive, just like what they did in Gaza. Cuffing and blindfolding. You handcuff for months, and then what happens? The blood circulation goes. Your hands turn blue. You have to amputate them. You are hanging from the ceilings. And they're amputated. Their legs and hands are amputated because of the handcuff injuries. But the amputation happens without anesthetic. What is this? Medical neglect. Look at the report. I mean, I don't have to make this up. This is from the Human Rights Watch. So who is there out there that has the nerve and the audacity and the guts and is bold enough to come on this platform and say, look, they want to refute us. Come now and challenge us. Over to you, Brother Muhammad, in terms of what you see. Shocking.
It's shocking. It really is. And there's still people in the chat who are saying there is another side of the story. This organization that you just put up there is funded by, an organization who's biased. We're getting so much nonsense in the chat. I remember the podcast.
Bring them on. And you see what grates me and what angers me. You are an empath, Brother Muhammad, and you've got a you've got a heart of gold and you get emotional. But when I come across this material, I'm filled with anger. I shouldn't be, but I'm filled with anger and disgust at the kind of horrific. I've been in a situation, where, in the South African context, you've had situations where children have drowned in latrines. You have situations now in Gaza where children are found dead and drowned in former sewage pits. Imagine what the parents are going through when they come across their children like this. Imagine what the parents are going through. Here's one thing. This is on my Facebook page. I think it's on my Facebook page. I don't know if I can share this Facebook page. I just want to share this before we get someone to come on.
Yeah, we've got a couple of people
screen.
backstage.
Yeah, there's a lot of people backstage. Let's basically we'll get them, but I want people to share to view this. This is from my Facebook page. Here, this is a father. Have you got it there? That discovers his father that's dead. Look at him. Can you see? Finds his child dead. What do you do in a situation like this? Look at the child. Murdered by Israelis.
Brother Ridwan just mentioned it in the chat perfectly. It seems to be a lot of the people who are from the Christian faith who seem to defend this type of murderous genocide.
But I wonder, you know what, Muhammad? Sorry to interrupt you. This is great. This here. This is ambulance medical workers that are buried in the rubble. Look at this.
كما نشاهد هذه السيارات مدمرة غير صالحة أصلا هي. بعدين إنه مفحرين ومطمينهم مشان ما يقدر حد يسحبهم ما يقدر إنه يطلع من هيك. يا الله هذا عدو غاشم فيش حاجة سلكانة منه. كما نشاهد.
If you're a Christian, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. If you're a Christian, you ought to be ashamed of yourself if you're a supporter of Zionism. Look at this.
Brother Yusuf, shall we remove it because it's getting a bit too much, to be honest. And
I understand. We can remove this. We can remove that from the screen.
It is quite a lot. Even myself.
It's insane, and people are blinded to the kind of evil that means they are inherently evil. These people are inherently evil. I'm sorry that those pictures are so disturbing, but and especially to someone like you, Brother Muhammad. But these people need to know. They need to know what they are defending. This is the problem. They need to come and be bold enough and see, look, they are on the path of evil. They are on the path of spiritual degradation. They've got no future for themselves in the hereafter due to their rotten and corrupt belief system and their illegitimate defense of the satanic state. What are you up to? What do you want with your life? That you are so psychopathic, so narcissistic that you cannot basically see suffering that has been inflicted by another human being, by an evil, rapacious regime. What is wrong with you?
Brother Yusuf, on the 22nd of July, we did a podcast, and I still remember it, and I still remember the date really well, regarding the brother who had a disability, Muhammad Bahar, I think his name was, and he was set upon by the dogs, and I think he had some learning difficulties, and they basically murdered him, left him in the room. They wouldn't let the family get to him. That for me was heartbreaking. It really was. And even I mentioned when you read the report of the dog was attacking him, the fact that he didn't understand that this dog is hurting him. He kept on tapping the dog to say, look, nice dog and whatnot, because he just didn't understand because he had learning difficulties. And then he was left in the room, and his body was there for weeks and so forth. And it really breaks my heart. Sometimes I do think, the hearts of these people are dead. The people are dead. The hearts are dead. They really are. And if you're not hurt or sickened by this, it doesn't. To me, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. If they were Israeli children, I would condemn it. I would say that's wrong. It doesn't matter to me. It would not matter to me. The fact that they are children, innocent people, I would say, look, the PLO or the Palestinian organization, what you're doing is wrong. Stop it. But I don't see anybody doing that. I don't see anybody from the Christians or the Zionists saying enough's enough, stop it. It's getting a bit too much now. And some of those images break my heart. They really do.
I wanted to show it because so that people know what we're dealing with. And you made a fantastic point that whatever justification or excuses you want to make or say who started it or whose fault, even if although it's false, it's not Hamas that is responsible for it. But even if you want to go by that particular line, nothing justifies what you see here. Nothing justifies this evil. I don't care how many excuses or justifications that you want to make, or that this is a war. This is not a natural disaster or a flood or a tsunami that has happened, which is just, this is just tragic. One of the tragedies of war. This is man-made inflicted suffering. So whoever wants to refute us, bring them on, Brother Mohammed. I want to speak to these individuals.
Sure. Hi, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Mike's not the guy that wants to refute us.
Yeah, I know. He's been waiting patiently.
No, I wasn't going to refute you. Obviously, this is a terrible war going on, and suffer the women and children as usual in war.
Yeah, Mike, good afternoon. So it seems that within the United States, you've got a situation where I see at the Democratic National Convention there were Palestinian doctors who wanted to meet Kamala Harris. And in fact, there was Dr. Taj, I forget her full name, American. I think she's American, but they accused her of being Palestinian. It's neither here nor there. The point is that they dehumanize the Palestinians. And Kamala Harris just plain down refused to meet up with these individuals. Completely, look at this. Look at the response, refuting Yusuf's lies. It's an Israeli soldier's right to have Palestinian women as sex slaves. It's our right to deal with it, you jihadis. And the word is F-U-C-K. Allah, I don't know. Muhammad is not here.
Yeah, he should come on. I saw.
He should come on. Bring him on. I want to see if you've got that. It's good to be abusive there, but come on the platform and challenge. I'm waiting for Muhammad to get you on, but put on your camera first. What you can do, if you are such a coward, we'll let you basically come on the stream with your face covered because you're a coward. You're a coward. But let Muhammad see you so that the stream doesn't get banned, by virtue of your abuse that is basically coming on. But what do you say about this character that's coming on? What do you say about the fact? Look at the stream, Brother Muhammad. You just missed this guy. If he wants to come on, bring him on, but see him from the background, and then let's get him on. Let's get him on. You see the comments he's making here. I'm saying you see the comments on your stream here. This individual here, demon possessed. Let him come on. Bring him on. Bring him on. I don't know who he is. He goes by the name Refuting Yusuf's Lies. Well, come on this platform. Be a man. Don't be a coward and start being abusive. And come on this platform and start talking and debating. You've seen the comment?
Right. People, what they normally do is type and then they run away, unfortunately. And that's what...
The guy's a coward. He's a coward.
Of course.
He's a coward. He's a coward. Well, Mike, what do you have to say? And then we've got Sandra Hall in the background. Mike, your comments.
Well, I was going to ask you about the hadith of coitus interruptus. You guys were talking about rape as a weapon of war, obviously.
Yeah, what's that got to do with the subject? What is that got to do with the subject? I mean, the authenticity of that hadith has been subjected to question. But what has that got to do with Israeli soldiers gang raping Palestinian medical healthcare workers? I mean, in the context, there's not a theological discussion. I know what hadith you are referring to, the expedition of Banu Mustalik. What has that got to do with the situation that is happening in Gaza right now?
Well, for instance, you brought up like Old Testament justifying the Israelis' actions. I mean, obviously you have
well, I mean, not entirely. You've seen some of the Jewish rabbis. You've seen some of the Jewish rabbis that have come on this platform program. We've had Rabbi Weiss. We've had Rabbi David Feldman. We've had, I believe, Tovia Singer hasn't been here. But a lot of these people will make the point that there's no justification in the Torah. It's time you give up the booze. There's no justification in the Torah for what Israel is basically engaging in. In fact, they would say from their perspective that Israel is an evil, ungodly, secular state that doesn't in fact adhere to the laws and commandments of Yahweh. So, but I mean, the point is, I don't see the logic behind that. If you're raising coitus interruptus, none of the Palestinians are engaging in coitus interruptus. And I don't think the vast majority of the people out there know what you're talking about, referring to, other than, of course, myself and Muhammad. But I'm saying, right now you've got a situation where Israeli death squads are shooting dead Palestinian people in cold blood, not just bombing them from the top and destroying them and using white phosphorus on them and so on, but killing them. Then they're taking these Palestinians, 9,000 up to date, in detention centers, in military encampments, in military facilities. And in many instances, they're raping these hostages to death. They're murdering them. They're not just taking people that they view or suspect as Palestinian militants or potential Hamas. These are healthcare medical workers kidnapped from these hospitals. So my question is, Mike, and maybe you could probably help me, why are people going on and seemingly making a series of unnecessary forms of justification for what is just plain down evil? What do you think is the rationale, is the modus operandi? Is it perhaps that people are just simply sick, that they're narcissistic, that because the suffering doesn't impact on them, that they want to engage and just simply go and find all forms of justification for the worst type of Nazi atrocities that you could probably see? What's the issue?
Sure. I think, I mean, obviously self-justification of atrocities is common within war. Americans, we've massacred many people.
Not on the scale. I'll tell you, your nation has committed some of the worst atrocities known to man, but not on the scale that you are seeing now. I mean, the Americans tried to hide what they did in Iraq, even when they targeted ISIS, by the way, and people were obviously killed. Nothing on the scale of what you see now. And Hamas is not ISIS. Hamas had an educational department. It had a medical facility. They had a political system. They had a legal system. They had obviously a militia segment, which is the Al-Qassam brigades. But even when United States at its heights were targeting ISIS in Iraq, nowhere near to what you see that Israel is doing in Gaza. And now they're not just starting in Gaza. Now it's happening in the West Bank, because now we see new reports that the ministers within the Knesset are stating that they want to send the West Bank, and certainly whatever's left of the West Bank under limited Palestinian Authority control, they want to send it back to the Stone Age. They want to do to those portions of the West Bank which are under Palestinian control, like Jenin and some of these other refugee camps, similar to how they've destroyed Gaza. I mean, there's no doubt. You have no doubt in your mind, Mike, and I just so that we're on the same page. You don't deny that they've totally destroyed Gaza. They've decimated Gaza. You agree with that? That's happened right now. They've decimated Gaza. Sure. Could we at least agree on that?
Absolutely.
Has it achieved its aims?
Biggest mowing of the grass they've ever done.
Yeah. Has it? Yeah, that's what Finkelstein would say.
I'm not really sure what their aims are.
What is the end game? What is Netanyahu's end game? Hamas is still there. They've killed maybe Ismail Haniyeh, but the Hamas militias the resistance is still fighting them. In fact, they are now coming with a little bit more intensity by Hezbollah and some of these other groups. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine is back. That's a socialist movement. It's a Christian Marxist movement. Christians out there, the PFLP, and Leila Khaled, who was part of the hijacking. Leila Khaled, by the way, is a Christian, for those out there. She wasn't a Muslim jihadi. And the PFLP is a Christian Marxist socialist movement. The resistance is stronger than ever. What they've succeeded in doing is basically destroy the lives of ordinary human beings. And in fact, it's worked against them, because the propaganda that they started off on October 7th has backfired badly. So the entire world has turned against them. Never before have we seen a situation where the entire world knows that and has seen Israel for what it was. I mean, I've seen a couple of books from the 70s and the 80s, even during the heights of the Lebanon War in 82. There was always justification in the mainstream media and the defense. Of course, back then we never had social media. But now the game is up. Now people know what Israel is. Now people know how that from a command responsibility point of view, torture, rape, gang rape, mass murder, all this is part and parcel of the Israeli vocabulary, even to the extent that they will murder their own civilians. I mean, if your kids were taken in custody or captivity and kept in a cave, let's assume that happened here, but let's assume that that happened to your children. Would you go and authorize the army to bomb the cave which has your children? I mean, it's a foolish point. And that's exactly what they're doing to the hostages. Those hostages are now turning, even the hostages' families have turned against the Israeli state to state that, look, this was just a charade, a canard, in terms of which you wanted to use it as a basis to decimate the entire land and appropriate more land for whatever purpose and aim that you want. I mean, maybe the gas, the oil fields off the coast of Gaza, they want that. They want the West Bank. They want the entire area. So it's a second Nakba.
Well,
in fact, worse than the Nakba, some would argue. But it's happening in real time because in 48, there are very few newspapers, no social media, no television, no internet, no nothing. People got to know about that years later. Now we're seeing it before our very eyes. And so the person who coined the term, not in our name, and never again, must be turning in his grave because it's happening before our very eyes and people are just doing nothing. This is a hypocrisy that we see in society at large, that you can become so systematically brainwashed, just like the COVID era. When your government and the establishment tells you to stay indoors, you stayed indoors like an obedient slave and servant that you are. Typical Orwellian move. That's how the society is. And that's where Islam takes people out, because Islam comes to liberate human beings from the service of man, from the service of leadership, from the service of monarch to, for example, the other individual. Sandra, before you go for coffee, you can come on.
Is it just me, or is Yusuf breaking up a lot?
It's probably your side. I can hear him nice and clearly. It's probably your side, Mike. Mike,
okay.
Final thing you'd like to say before we get Sandra on? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Bring Sandra on. It's nice talking to y'all. I'm glad to see Mohammed. You survived the race wars there in the UK.
Amazing. So, I'll just, yeah. Okay, we'll chat another time. Thank you, Mike, for coming on. You look after.
Mike.
Enjoy the game.
Great to have you.
I know Sandra's here. I think she's going to get a cup of coffee, so we just wait for her.
Who's Sandra Hall?
She's in the chat. She's a regular to the show, also known as, I think, Hindsight. So
okay.
She posted some things, and I want you to just check this.
What did she say?
Where is the medical supplies? Apparently, to her, Israel donated 50 incubators from the start.
No,
that's false. And Democracy
that's
Now
false.
Has always been biased, just like Al Jazeera. I'm like,
no, I mean, this is insane. I mean, that's a Human Rights Watch. Forget Democracy Now, but what about the Human Rights Watch? And what about Haaretz? Is Haaretz also? Is Haaretz also? So she said Israel. I mean, just a search blocking aid, blocking medical supplies to Gaza. Israel is blocking medical supplies to Gaza. Israel has blocked medical supplies from Gaza. I mean, this has been going on. Even the European Parliament. This is the European. I'll give you something. I don't know if this is enough, Mohammed. If I can.
So she's here, Sandra. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Well, I went to go get some more coffee. I didn't hear what he said just now.
No, we're just talking amongst ourselves. It's fine.
We're talking amongst ourselves, Sandra. But I just want to raise something that you stated about the fact that that Israel is providing medical supplies. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's false. Here's it here, Brother Mohammed. Here's a report by the European Parliament, and this is as early as February 2024. This is early as February, and now it's reached endemic stage where Israel basically has put a complete blockade, if you look at it, on food and medical supplies and its effects on animals in Gaza.
Okay, so why would they do that? I'm curious.
Well, because they want to destroy millions and affect millions of innocents and cause thousands of deaths. I mean, this is the whole aim. All the while presenting the idea that they are not. You see, there's two excuses that they're doing. The one excuse is that they claim that Hamas would be stealing these food and medical supplies. That was their first excuse. That was then exposed because we showed images and footages of Israeli settlers backed by Israeli soldiers, as well as Israeli police personnel, who were personally destroying supplies from trucks, from aid agencies that were going. They were totally destroying these supplies, medical supplies as well as food supplies. Are you familiar with that?
What about the stories of Hamas taking that stuff over and then turning around and selling it to the Gazans, which was meant to be free?
What about that? Well, that was a charade that was basically invented by Israel. Let me just give you something. I want to share something with you. I want to share something with you right now. I want to share something with you, Brother Mohammed. If I can just share something with Sandra, I want to give you. This is a medical supplies and the food that was basically blocked at the border. I want to show you something here. Blocking food and medical supplies at the border. This has been going on for several months. So I'm going to share something with you. I don't know if you can see the screen, but this is a situation where the Gaza. This is a report. This is from a Western particular channel. So it's not you can't accuse it of being Al Jazeera. But I'm going to share this with you, and then I want to know your thoughts and comments, and then you can come in. So I'm just going to share this with you. And Brother Mohammed, if you can basically share the screen here. Can you share the screen? Here we are. I'm going to just expand this.
What is ClickUp? ClickUp
Hold on a second. Let me just get the advert out, and I'm going to share this completely here. Here we are. Here we are.
Excuses for not allowing more aid into Gaza. The US military has released more footage tonight of another humanitarian aid drop in Gaza, 60 bundles of food, which they say provide more than 36,000 meals. The United States says a quarter of the population is now close to famine. Our senior international correspondent, Orla Guerin, has sent this report from the Israel-Egypt border, a warning it contains upsetting images.
Sometimes war kills slowly and quietly.
Look at this. This is famine and starvation you never saw, Sandra. But I want to come to the critical point.
Hunger attacking the tiniest bodies. The Al Adwa Health Center in Rafah is filling up with malnourished infants, like Ahmed, who has lost half his body weight during the war. Children who survive the bombings may not survive famine.
Now look at these people here. Look at these scoundrels.
In Israel, some blocking a border crossing today. Family groups with their babes in arms, determined to stop aid that is desperately needed by families in Gaza. They pushed past border police, as they do twice a week. Among the protesters, Yael Sabriago, who had to hide from Hamas on October 7th and who has a loved one trapped in Gaza. This is my uncle Lior Rudayev, she says. He's been a hostage for 151 days. He's got a heart condition. He hasn't had any medication for 151 days. Why aren't the hostages getting humanitarian aid?
How can they get humanitarian aid if Israel is blocking?
The commander says, I'm open for aid.
They can get all the aid they want. Release the hostages and they will get all the aid, everything.
But I want to take you to a scene where the Israelis basically start destroying the aid. Have you seen that picture there? Where Israelis are basically destroying the aid. I want to show you this here from Middle East Eye.
I haven't seen it.
Destroying aid. I want you to see this. Destroying food. This is Israel destroying food. Here we are. Here we are. Have a look at this. Look at this. Look at these scumbags. This is food for poor people.
Now those look like just average civilians to me.
No, the soldiers are there and the military personnel and the police are there, and this is at the Tarkumia checkpoint. But have a look at this. This is 55 seconds daily. Look at this.
It's quite shocking when you say to me, hindsight, that they're civilians. What about the people of Gaza, the Palestinians?
I get what you're saying. It's just
Sandra, you made the point without evidence that Hamas is stealing food aid. That is a lie that is put out by Israel, where you basically are seeing a situation where trucks are heading to the Gaza Strip. Tens of thousands of Palestinians face food and aid shortages, and these Zionist scoundrels and satanic individuals are destroying food and medical aid supplies. This is happening daily and being reported by the Haaretz. But see, this just have a look at this. This is 55 seconds. I want you to see what happens at the end, because you see the border police and you see the Israeli soldiers sitting back and allowing it to happen. Have a look at this. Have a look at this. Food. Food for babies.
The soldiers there should have put a stop to that. These are civilians doing it, but there has to be somebody around guarding that food. Where is everybody?
So the Israeli civilians are blocking food supply and aid to Gaza, and the Israeli military and soldiers are engaging in gang rape of Palestinians to the extent that they rape Palestinian medical healthcare workers to death and blow up children's heads and destroy and kill and set dogs on Down syndrome children and children with autism. Would you have it in your mind to condemn them as evil, rapacious, repugnant, and satanic
Anybody
to
that
the very
does
core?
anything like that is evil as the day is long. See, here's the thing with me. I'm gonna say something.
No, hold on a second, Sandra. You didn't listen to my question. Do you condemn Israel for gang raping Palestinian medical healthcare workers and female children?
You mean what? Israel as a whole?
Israeli soldiers, the military, by virtue of command
condemn
responsibility.
Innocent Israelis that would have no part of this. You see what I'm
this
saying?
is part of
I
policy.
condemn those that are actually doing it. You bet.
Would you condemn the Israeli government for allowing this to happen? Let me just share
I would
something with
condemn
you.
anybody not overseeing this.
No, it's a simple question, Sandra. You're not making sense. I want to stop this, but I want to try and understand your position, Sandra. I want to understand your position. I've got you before me, Brother Muhammad. Just share this. This is an op-ed report by the UN, the United Nations, and experts that are appalled, reporting human rights violations against Palestinian women and girls by Israeli soldiers, which have been basically authorized by top members of the Israeli military establishment. Here's a report, Brother Muhammad. Can you see this? I'm just going to expand it, and I want your comment on this, Sandra. I want you to be, because you sound like a decent individual. Maybe you're brainwashed.
Can you just make the screen bigger? That's it, yeah.
Yeah, I can read it now.
Here's it. Palestinian women and girls have been reportedly executed in Gaza. Extrajudicial killings of Palestinian women. These women are denied menstruation pads, food, medicine, severely beaten. And in many instances, these children have been there are disturbing reports of at least one female infant forcibly transferred by the Israeli army into Israel, and of children being separated from their parents whose whereabouts remain unknown. And if you go down further in the report, it basically states that at the highest level, the Israeli regime, the Israeli military establishment, the Israeli ministers within the Israeli Knesset know that this is basically happening and authorize this. So my question is, will you condemn the Israeli state as an evil regime for what it's doing? I mean, how can you sit back and support rape? Do you support rape of women?
Well, of course.
You're a woman. Not. Would you support that your mother was kidnapped and gang raped by a group of Israeli military officials and thugs, and nothing is done to them?
Absolutely not.
Sorry?
Absolutely not.
Of course not. So what about the thousands of Palestinians now, up to 9,000, that are being kept in Israeli torture dungeons? You had a situation just 2 weeks ago where we discussed they took a particular shocker, what they call this a taser, and they stuffed it up the rectum and the anus of a man, and they tortured him, they raped him to death. And then this report came to the military personnel at the highest level, and then they sent the police. And then when the police came in, the police then stated there was a massive riot, that they have the right to rape these Palestinians. But
who is overseeing all this when all this crap has taken place?
Sandra, the government.
There were reports. There was a video which we cannot show on social media, which was taken by the Israeli soldiers and which has been admitted by the Times of Israel and the Haaretz, which are Israeli press organizations, that they've had actual footages of these gang rape scenes being seen. It was reached the offices of Netanyahu. And when there was a superficial arrest being conducted of these Israeli soldiers, there was a riot. But the riot was not because rape had taken place. The riot was because they were refused the right to rape. So it was these rape riots that were basically
in the jail or where?
No, these rapes that are being taking place are taking place when the Palestinians are being kidnapped by the Israeli soldiers in Gaza and the West Bank, and they've been taken to either military detention facilities inside Israel, or there are military encampments and detention facilities in the West Bank where, for example, the laws of Israel don't necessarily apply. And then they kept in detention for approximately 7 to 8 months at a time. Now, here's an independent report where they basically show that, for example, children as young as 9 and 8 are sexually abused by the Israeli soldiers. Leading figures in the Netanyahu regime are fully aware of this and have done nothing. That's why to date, since October 7th, there has been not a single Israeli soldier that has been arrested or charged for war crime, let alone these rapes that are basically being taking place. So my question is, why is it that American women like yourselves...
Wait, just a second.
The question I want to ask you before you talk, why are American women and American Christians so fundamentally brainwashed by their particular governments and their Fox media and so on, that they cannot see evil when evil stares them in the face? I mean, how more psychopathic and narcissistic can one be that one cannot recognize such evil?
I don't have an answer for that. All I know is...
But you came on and defended Israel. You came on and you defended Israel, right?
Okay, can I speak?
So you accept that Israel
YUSUF, let us speak. YUSUF, let us speak.
Okay, go ahead.
I know.
Okay, I'm going to start off by saying I can't relate to none of this stuff, because even in American prisons, there are guards that put a stop to crap like that. And if anything out of the way like this stuff right here is happening, gets dealt with swiftly, people get fired, people themselves get put in jail. I've never even fathomed anything like this. This is beyond me and everything. All I'm saying is that Israel, from the start, was defending themselves. But however, in the light of all this stuff that I've been seeing on your channel, Muhammad, I just don't know what to think.
Sandra, in the UK here, maybe we have more access to information. I don't know. I normally watch auditing videos where people in America, they go around auditing the police or auditing security officers and stuff, and it's quite interesting.
That don't happen here.
No, it does happen there. That's why I watch it. I watch it on YouTube. It's in America. You got famous people who go around. You got Long Island Audit. I watch him a lot. He goes around various police organizations, public buildings, and you can see how the police treat him. He gets arrested. He gets trespassed, even though it's part of the law in your country that in public places there's a freedom of press. You can record whatever your eyes can see if it's a public area. And of course, the police abuse their powers. You get reports of people getting shot without any justification.
I know, but they get dealt with.
I don't think so,
Sandra.
Sandra, there's in most occasions there's internal investigation takes place amongst the police force. And majority of the time, the police officers are actually told to resign, and then they can apply for another police force in another state, and they can continue.
I know
with
about that, but you know
Unless,
what? They're putting a stop to that. They're making it to where they can't be a police officer ever. My father was a police officer. He was one for 30 years and everything. So I kind of know how things work with there. And I'm telling you, this stuff that you're showing me right now is it's like a movie to me.
But this is
Sandra,
real.
It's real.
It's not a movie. It's real.
It's real, Sandra. I want to ask you. I'm just asking you out of curiosity, not that I'm interested, but so that I know a kind of a timeline in terms of how to address you. Are you how old are you? Have you been around for some time?
I'm 61 years old.
Okay, that's you're much older than me, and I probably slightly older than Brother Muhammad. So you've been around for some time, and you're an elder. You'll be a senior citizen, and you probably are aware of the fact that this that you see here did not commence on October 7th. The torture, the sanguinary warfare, the bombing, the apartheid-like conditions that the Palestinians are subjected to didn't start on October 7th. It happened way, 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 way before that. I mean, it's been going on for decades. But for a long time, the United States administration and successive administrations have been, due to the influence of lobbying groups like the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, have been very pro-Israeli in their approach. And so not surprisingly, this kind of information is not basically released to you. Like, I'll give you something here. This is on my screen. If you can see the screen, I'm going to expand it slightly so you can view it. This is by the Israeli Israeli Information Center for Human Rights in the Occupied Territories. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Can you see this on the screen? It's called Welcome to Hell. We discussed this about 2 weeks ago, but it was released in August, this last month. The Israeli prison system as a network of torture camps. Welcome to Hell is a report on the abuse and inhuman treatment of Palestinians held in custody. B'Tselem, which is an Israeli human rights organization, conducted testimonies from 55 Palestinians, and they detailed the physical and psychological abuse that these Palestinians were basically, subjected to. Food deprivation, starvation. I mean, Nazi-like conditions that we saw in Auschwitz and Dachau. Here's it. There's a full report. If you can send an email, we don't have to share your email publicly, but in the chat box, if you can forward us your email, we'll give you this information. So, for example, you have situations like this chap here, life in prison. After it it continued as usual, the torture after October 7th. After that, it was like living in a tsunami. I was put in a pit in the ground. When I was in it with all the other detainees, this is a woman, the soldiers ordered me to take off my hijab. They told me, I killed your husband and I want to bury you alive. Let the dogs eat you. About half an hour later, they put us on a pit.
This is insane.
The point is that these reports, you have a situation where this guy had his legs amputated in custody by virtue without anesthesia. I mean, these are Israeli human rights organizations reporting the worst. This lady killed, murdered, worst type of humanitarian violations that you can ever imagine. None of these prisoners, none of these Israeli soldiers get charged criminally. None of them, if there's killings of Palestinians that happen, sometimes in most instances they are charged of culpable homicide. They are convicted of culpable homicide, and then they are given a suspended sentence. But what you see here is systematic torture and evil of the worst kind. This goes beyond just simply bombing, which in itself is evil. Bombing an entire neighborhood with white phosphorus, and you make the justification you're out to get one Hamas member, but you murder probably 200 to 300 Palestinian civilians and children in the process. That's murder. There's no justification for this. Unfortunately, Americans don't get to see this. And this goes to show there's no real freedom of expression in the United States to get this kind of information out there. your Jewish lobby is so powerful, the Zionist lobby, that they control the entertainment industry, Harvey Weinstein, the sex abuser. They control the media, Fox News, Rupert Murdoch, all the guys, ABC. Most of your major news channels are pro-Israeli, funded by the Israeli lobbyists. Democracy Now! Is an independent, I think you made the point about Amy Goodman. Democracy Now! Is an independently funded news outlet by viewers. They depend on viewers. And unlike the corporate media, Democracy Now! Is not the corporate media. But besides Democracy Now!, I gave that particular piece that they were just simply regurgitating what is being documented by Israeli human rights organizations. So if we presented Palestinians, what Palestinians are saying, we'd be accused of bias. But what happens when these reports of torture, extrajudicial killings, and mass murder of Palestinians are coming up from Israeli human rights organizations that are also being targeted by the Israeli regime itself? This is the problem that you've got, and people don't know. So we need people like you to help us in sharing the message that is not coming out there.
Well, I'm definitely appalled. I like I said, I'm about speechless. I don't know what to say. This war has got to end now. Both sides need to lay down their weapons and stop this. I'm gonna get it back in the chat, and I'm just gonna listen to y'all some more.
Okay.
I think I need a break.
Okay. Thank you, Sandra, for coming on. Thank you.
Okay.
You take care.
All right, bye.
Yeah, so, thanks, Sandra. I think maybe I was firm with her, but Sandra, thank you for coming there. And I think it goes to show that a lot of people are also ignorant of what is going on in Gaza. And Sandra, I mean, just on the aspect of October 7th, whilst people keep on bringing up October 7th all the time, I want to share this from you again. From the Haaretz, some of the more news reports that are coming out again and again on October 7th. People keep on bringing up October 7th. Well, look at what the new reports that are coming out on October 7th in terms of what is going on and what happened. This is a report. You remember that back on October 7th, there were these families' homes that they were killed and blown up and burned to death. And the blame was on Hamas. Well, Sandra and others out there, this is from the Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper. We're now reading reports clearly that the families of Israelis that were killed in the Kibbutz Be'eri home, they were hit by the IDF tank. The entire house was destroyed by the IDF on October 7th. So more and more information is coming out. The Times of Israel, the fact that now, as we've been saying, months later, and this is another report. This is from the Dispatch, so people can know that we are not making up stories. We try, in all these streams, myself and Brother Muhammad have tried to share the most non-biased information out there. This is from the People's Dispatch. Again, confirming what we've been saying about October 7th. Israel murdered its own people using the Hannibal Directive on October 7th. And the current Israeli government has been indifferent to the lives of Palestinian and even Israeli civilians, has instead been driven by Netanyahu's political calculations. I mean, and Sandra, I can understand you became emotional in the end, and I respect that. And I respect the fact that, you've got a heart, which many people on the stream in the past have not basically had. But the reality of the situation, that it is only one side that does not want to end this war. I mean, Hamas has basically agreed to ceasefire upon ceasefire, even compromise ceasefire, and Israel has basically turned a blank face. Here's it here.
YUSUF, we've got another. We got Anam joining us again from New York. He came on previously, and I'm still kind of like confused with his stance. Was he pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinian or in the middle? in-betweener, as they say here in the UK. So I'm going to bring him on now, and we can get straight to the chase. Anam, welcome back to the show. Nice to see you.
Yeah, hey, nice to see you guys too. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
So yeah, I was still waiting to figure out, after rewatching the stream, what is your position?
Right, brother. And you didn't get a straight yes or no answer from me. So you're very patient. We have to give you that commendation. Thank you for having me on again. So yeah, brother, I think I'm glad it's just the three of us, right? Because remember we had two other pro-Palestine speakers, so I felt a little bit ganged up on a little bit in that room. But I wanted to say, I guess my evolution, what I would say is I could call myself pro-Israel. I would call myself pro-Israel. And the reason is because, we have this narrative, basically they stole the land and they're illegitimate and, therefore everything we do is justified. And I think, it took a long time. But what I would say is when you look at the history of Israel, and actually the thing that kind of clicked it for me, I would even, I was so surprised to even call myself a Zionist, is that when I read a biography of David Ben-Gurion and how he organized the Jewish labor unions before the 48 independence, and basically, the way there was an analogy. I think it's very interesting. Imagine, there was the city of Jaffa, right before Tel Aviv. It was across the bay from what is now Tel Aviv. It's a very, imagine you are a Arab farmer, a peasant farmer, and you see across the bay a small city, being founded, and then within 40 years, from 1880 to 1920 or something like that, it becomes a city of over 1 million people. So, the fact is, right, I feel like, and one thing, if I could connect it to a larger point, and thank you for having me on. So, Brother Yusuf,
I just want to raise something with you, because you mentioned, let me just end the...
Well, actually, brother, so I can I do a fact check on you a little bit, right before you read some great report from...
No, I'm not reading anything.
Okay. But you're very well sourced, by the way, and I'm so impressed. Like you would have been my hero, when I was 14 years old, because you spit facts, like a machine gun, So it's very good to have people who know their, and when you asked the earlier person, how long have you been around? That matters too, so I can see you've been around. So, but I wanted to fact check you if I could, you're my elder, but I'll be audacious. So when you said in 2017, Hamas said that they're willing to, accept the 67 agreement, I actually just learned, though, they reiterated their original stance that all of Palestine is an Islamic waqf, and therefore giving up an inch of it would be sacrilege in their theology. So that's what they reasserted in 2017. So so I didn't have that knowledge then, but I thought of you in the week since we last met.
So you basically want a response on that particular issue as to...
you said they agreed to the 67 borders, but I'm saying they actually issued a declaration saying that every inch of Palestine cannot be surrendered under any...
No, in fact, if you look at there's two charters. If you look at there's two aspects of the Hamas charter. Firstly, there's the charter that was basically produced in 1987, right? That was the original charter, which, when you look at propagandists in the Western world want to refer to, there's a hadith which is quoted in that charter, because they basically speaking about the idea,
the Day of Judgment.
Criticism against Hamas is that Hamas wants everything and wants a total destruction of Jews.
By the way, I used to be a supporter, but in the 2000s and stuff. Yeah, I would have, because like you said, they're just the brotherhood, right? So,
yeah, they're the Muslim.
I would just be a brotherhood.
They're the Muslim brother, but I mean, here's the situation. Here's where I want to break down this kind of haspara, this propaganda in terms of what happens. What does a Hamas charter contain? You see, because the Hamas representative, Usama Hamdan, who was for many years represented, I don't think he's there anymore. I don't even know he's killed. he made the point, in fact, even Ismail Haniyeh made the point that they don't have a problem with Jews per se. But now what happens is that when people try and show that Hamas is anti-Jewish and anti-Semitic, they normally basically refer to the 1988 charter. So if you see most of the Western mainstream media, and I think I'm going to share some time and we can go back and forth, but I think I need to place this in proper context. The charter that people describe as anti-Semitic and is frequently invoked as a means of showing that Hamas is inflexible against the Israeli state is not the 2017 charter. It's a charter of 1988. But what the charter of 1988 does, and what it says, if you can check it up, there's only one portion of that charter which quotes a particular hadith, which is an end-time hadith, which is eschatological in nature, which speaks about the famous hadith that come the end times and come the second coming of Jesus. Even the stones and the trees will basically be, proverbially speaking, whether you view it as symbolic or literal, that there's a Jew behind me, get him, or kill him. And that quote was in the original charter. And that is basically being viewed as an indication of the lack of inflexibility on the aspect of Hamas recognizing the state of Israel. That was in 88, 87. Bearing in mind that Hamas back then was different from the Hamas now. It was not politically evolved. It was not politically astute like the PFLP or the Palestinian Authority. It was a charity organization, and some would argue even backed to a certain level by the state of Israel, who propped it up. But that charter was updated. And I don't have it on me now. I'll have to, obviously, I can email it to you. But the charter was updated in 2006. And you go back to 2006. I'll have to check on my documents. And if you put on your email, I'll try and send it to you. And you can come in later in the future when we have these programs. That in 2006, Hamas, in fact, acknowledged that it would accept a Palestinian state on 1967 borders, but without recognizing Israel. Now, obviously, their principle is that they believe that Israel is illegitimate. We believe the same thing. I believe Israel is illegitimate as a state. I believe that it doesn't have the right to exist. Doesn't mean that I want Jews to be kicked out. I mean the regime itself. And they made the point that, look, they would compromise in accepting the 1967 borders by virtue of the fact that they won these particular superficial elections. So what then subsequently happened thereafter is you had these strikes by Israel against the Gaza Strip when Hamas was in superficial control of that particular, and then of course there was a response by Hamas. My particular point is this: is that people use the charter, the 1987 charter, because there's an updated charter. I don't have it right now on me. I will send it to you, but they use the charter as an excuse to ignore and malign Hamas. I'll give you one example. If you look, for example, at the ANC's charter, if you look at the pre-freedom charter documents, the pre-freedom charter documents of the African National Congress, and I'm not a supporter of the ANC, but the ANC is viewed globally as a liberation movement. If you look at the pre-freedom charter documents, it read like a black supremacist movement, which was anti-white. And so similarly, I'm saying that it is unfair to basically look at Hamas and judge it on its 1987. If you look at the 2017 Hamas document, I'll try and get it. I'm trying to see if I can get it now for this particular stream. Here they basically state it's a 42-page document. And in that specific document, they essentially restate that Hamas is a Palestinian Islamic liberation and resistance movement. They state that its goal is to liberate Palestine and confront the Zionist project. And they state that the principles and objectives extend from the River Jordan right to the bottom, but they endorse the existence of a two-state solution as a historical compromise, which the 1988 Hamas Charter did not. The distinction between the 2017 Hamas Charter and the 1988 Hamas Charter is that the 1988 Hamas Charter does not endorse the two-state solution. I mean, I don't know. But in 88, they stated that the entire area between the Jordan and the sea is to be regarded as inalienable and all-time and Arab Islamic land. Now, in 2017, I think if you look at one of the sections there, they basically make the point that Israel's establishment is illegitimate, it is illegal, as a Zionist entity. They oppose the apartheid state of Israel, but at the same time, they are willing to accept a compromise of a two-state solution because, I mean, from their perspective, they would be getting some degree of sovereignty and some degree of control, which, of course, Israel never gave to them.
You're saying in 2017, they asserted that they wanted two states.
YUSUF, we'll let Anam, we'll give Anam a minute or so to respond. Or
no, but I want to question him because he mentioned Ben Gurion. So
right.
I want to question you about David. But go ahead, go ahead, Anam.
Okay, yeah. I mean, so I guess, you know, on that vein, you know, the brother might be asking me like, why are you a Zionist, right? So it's that.
I never asked you if you're a Zionist. I said, are you pro-Israeli or pro-Israel? I never said you're a Zionist.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, I'm both. You know, like I definitely I don't support. You know, we're talking about prison rape and you know this. I feel like the onslaught has been wilder than we could have ever imagined. But you know, can I point?
Would you condemn that? Would you condemn that? That's the whole point. Would you condemn that?
Of course. But here's my thing though. I would condemn it if there were no hostages. And you guys said last time that's a red herring. But
yeah, it is a red herring. It is a red herring.
Could I mean here the only empirical way to test that would be if tomorrow they released all 107 people and the bodies that they're holding. Then, if the bombing didn't stop, then I would be wrong. But we would have.
Yeah, but they made the point. I mean,
let me tell you. But this is the paradigm Israel's coming from, right? Because you know, to show you, you know, since I'm here to represent the other side, is that look, Thomas Friedman in the New York Times, right? And he wrote.
So you're representing the other side. I just want to make it clear for my mind. So I won't.
No. But before we jump into a number of things, I want to first clarify one aspect with you because. I mean,
if you look, brother, here's the thing: is Brother Muhammad. He really speaks only like one sentence at a time. So let me give him the honor, and he's technically the host. So let me give him a little bit of primacy. I believe the brother.
Okay, I just want to ask you. You made a point, right? You made a point about David Ben. Before we come to the hostages stories, I can't let you get away with something. You mentioned David Ben Gurion, and Ben Gurion in the 20th century. By even Israeli historians, pro-Israeli historians like Tom Segev and Benny Morris. Right. Benny Morris, I mean, he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Finkelstein, you know, his interview with us stated the same thing. But even Benny Morris mentioned it in one of his books. I think it may have been the birth of the Palestinian refugee problem. He makes the point, a pro-Israeli historian, that even in the 20th century, if there was one politician that is an unindicted war criminal in the 20th century, it would be basically David Ben Gurion. And it basically states that Ben Gurion's ethnic cleansing of Palestine, which he used in his books, I think the 2014 book, earns him a place in the pantheon of the wicked. And he makes the argument that his crimes were not as great as some, but greater than many. Now, what I find quite ironical is that you've got your two pro-Israeli historians. One is Tom Segev. The other is Benny Morris. They describe Ben Gurion as an unindicted war criminal of the 20th century. And you are stating as a Muslim that Ben Gurion is somebody that you could view as heroic. You don't see that as problematic?
It was a great biography. But let me...
No, but I mean himself as an individual. I mean, he was behind.
There's a narrative, right? And there's a narrative, and you're saying at the end of the war, you know, the expulsion.
He was behind that.
Let me go there, but remember, you said you would phrase the question, and then I could address the other.
Yeah,
brother,
okay,
right?
Go ahead.
So thank you. So you know, here's, you know, I don't think you could say I'm fully pro-Israel. Brother, because, you know, for example, we had Brother YUSUF say last week, right? You could theoretically have a one-state solution if you put the entire current government on trial. You know, you have something like South Africa or Rwanda going on where the people, you know, like something like a reconciliation between the groups. You know, so I think that would be a just and reasonable solution in many ways, right? But what I feel is that what we as Muslims and people who are pro-Palestine, we will consistently.
So are you saying, you said the we term, and you mentioned it previously that we are pro-Palestinian. Are you adding yourself to that?
I don't support like occupation and settlements and bulldozing homes. Like this is all.
That's what Israel is doing. I mean, Anam, is that not? I mean, that's what's sustaining the Israeli state right now. I mean,
okay, right. But so remember, I think like last time, right? So I said, look, there's people who in the settlements. The Netanyahu government doesn't even have a majority of the Democratic votes in Israel, right? So with all these parliamentary shenanigans, he's been sitting in office for 12 years. And so there's a lot of criticism to be, but more than half of Israeli society is actually more of a partner for peace than we would imagine. And then I feel what we missed then, right? Because we do have a partner for peace there. What we missed then, right, is that we had an incredible moment like 4 years ago when the Arab parties,
Tell you what, Brother Anam, I don't want to go to another topic. Brother YUSUF asked you a question regarding that particular individual, and you said he had a fantastic biography or something.
Basically, what you mentioned.
Let me tell you what I liked about it. Let me tell you what I liked about Ben Gurion. Then, sure.
And there's too many issues. Do you agree with me that
you asked me about Ben Gurion, right?
Yeah, Ben Gurion was a war criminal.
So let's talk about what this man, right? He's from Lithuania or something. He shows up on the beach in Tel Aviv in 1890 or something, right? Then the first thing you do when you get to the beach is they tell you to go back because there's no jobs. It's the economy is not great. There's no state, right? And then what you have to do is you have to sell like ice cream or soda on the beach. You have to sleep on the beach. So for example, what I'm saying is though, like from within 40 years, they built a civil society. The Jews that we are so mad that they came to Israel, they came to the Mandate of Palestine, that they bought up the land from the.
At what cost? I think you're failing. You see, let me come in here.
What I'm saying is though, like.
But I need to interject there because I'm not going to take you off your line of thought. You're stating that the point you're making is that they built a civil society. My issue with you is that they did it by virtue of the fact of, what they would call the Plan Dalet. You familiar with the Plan Dalet? Are you familiar with the Plan Dalet? It's a Zionist military
plan. The Jewish National Fund buying
the JNF, but it was also conceptualized.
They bought a lot of the land, right? But I mean, it was anyway. It was only a third of the land.
But hold on a second. Buying land, you see.
So let's. You want to talk about 48?
You said a lot of things. If you buy land, it's one thing. But if you buy land with a certain ulterior motives, that becomes problematic, particularly if it's for purpose of ethnic cleansing. So my question is that if you look at Gurion's role, Gurion was part of the Haganah, which was involved in death squad. So, for example, according to Plan Dalet, that was a military plan which was executed.
Okay. So you're fast forwarding a little bit.
And 48, but the plan was a blueprint for the death squads that engaged like Irgun and Haganah and Stern, where you had Arab town after Arab town and village after village being massacred and Palestinians being raped. Now, Gurion was very much part of that. For example, the Deir Yassin massacre. And in certain cases, you had a situation where the entire village was put to the sword, was totally exterminated, not just simply expelled outside the borders of the state. Okay. So now to suggest that Israel established itself on the blood of other people's lives and on the rape of Palestinian women, that somehow the other needs to be viewed as affirmative or positive in some way by virtue of the fact that they've established a flourishing society. But the flourishing society is established on the death and the bloodshed of the Palestinians, like South Africa. South Africa during the height of apartheid was far more better in a better shape.
You've given us a history of the 1948 war, and it's great. Tom Segev wrote a great book, and I suggest everybody read it.
I've got the book. I've got the book by Segev. I've got all of Segev.
What I'm saying is, though,
I've got all of those.
No, I mean,
you mentioned Ben Gurion.
By the way, Tom Segev wrote the book on the Palestinian mandate, the British mandate of Palestine, and even Tom Segev confirms.
If you also wrote a book about the 48 war itself, but yeah.
No, I'm talking about the one before the 48 war, from the British mandate of 17, right
it's
up
called
to 48.
One Palestine Complete. It's the only time there was ever a unified Palestinian
state. And he points out and he alludes to the death squads, the Jewish death squads that were there and fomented and established by people like Ben Gurion and all of those that became the apparatus of the Israeli defense force. So I'm saying that if Israel and Zionism by its very nature is inherent
Good.
Zionism
Let's
is
talk.
based on the definition of ethnic cleansing. Now, how can you support something which is based and ideologically infested with the idea that you have to ethnically cleanse other people? That's an evil system.
Do you want to add anything, brother?
No, I'm just asking you that question.
No, I was asking the other brother because you did. I understand your point, but I wanted to see if.
No, it's fine. You carry on. If you want to respond to what Brother Yusuf said.
I just want to clarify this with you on Gurion, and then we can go on as to why you don't recognize Israel as an apartheid state.
Okay, so the Israel has Zionism at its inception, right? It is a Enlightenment creature, liberal creature, right? And so in its idea, it's actually not exclusive to the fact of other people. But from reading this book and other books from about the 20s and stuff, there were, first of all, the 1929 riot from Hebron, but there were numerous riots from the 20s. And, part of that is all the Arabs, right? They go on a lynch mob and they rape like a 14-year-old girl, right? Which is the worst thing you could do. They just kill people up and down for no reason. And, the funny thing is though, right? This is not even, I'm not even saying this as like a condemnation of, this is from Damascus all the way down to Hebron. It's just up and down the entire, through the 20s. They were just lynching Jews, because that was the atmosphere. But here's the funny thing, right? This is just a fact of history. I'm sorry, brother. You speak for at length, right? So if I could.
Well, this is our stream, so we can speak for how long we want to. It's not a debate.
Yeah, I'm sure, but you would naturally win the argument if you,
brother Anam. What you suggested last time, but you had to leave. Leave an email address in your private chat, and then we can do a formal timed discussion. That way, nobody will speak over each other. If you want to do that,
I just want to ask him this. There's two aspects. No, but quickly, because we get caught up in. There's a historical aspect which we can debate, and there's a lot of debate.
History is everything.
There's a historical point, and it's been debated at length, right? But I'm talking about the modern
early Jewish unions wanted Arabs to be a part of the labor movement. It's only the animosity between the two societies that Zionism became. And the funny thing is, by the way, they wanted Arabs to work for them, so it's inherently a capitalist.
But in a servitude form, they wanted Arabs to be subject to them. And by the way, there's a lot to be said about the nexus between the Zionist movement and, of course, the Nazi regime. There's talks, for example, about the close links between Irgun and the Nazi Party. I don't know if you know that, but I'll share that particular link with you.
Yeah, there's a link.
Also mentioned by Segev. But I just want to clarify something with you, leaving aside the history. Do you not see? You're an Israeli supporter, and Israel is viewed as.
I'm just saying they're not all bad people.
State. Israel is viewed as an apartheid state. Do you not condemn Israel as an apartheid?
Hold on. Did apartheid South Africa have 20% of its parliament represented by black parties?
Yes, they did.
It had black parties in apartheid South Africa.
Can I tell you who they were? Can I tell you? People don't know this. You see, in apartheid South Africa, we had what we would call under white rule. People don't know this. That there were even black magistrates in the apartheid regime. Let me explain what happened. In the apartheid system, what the white regime did, there was a majority government, but within the major parliament, there was what we would call, for example, the certain commissions that were established to have what we would call Bantustan states. And, for example, parliaments that, for example, would cater for Indians.
They had a reserve majority for whites. That's what they had.
Of course, the same thing basically is happening in Israel. So the point being made.
It's not a reserve majority. The Arabs get 20% of the vote.
But let's start with this. My question I want to ask, Anam,
if they have enough people.
According to Adala,
did you know that the only reason Shimon Peres lost in 1996 to Netanyahu was because the Arabs didn't vote because Shimon Peres was bombing Lebanon in Operation Grapes of Wrath? So if the Arabs in Israel turned out to vote, they could have brought in liberal parties. And
if Israel basically allows the vote for all Palestinians today.
No, I'm just talking about the 20% of.
Okay, so I want to ask you something. I want to ask you something. Do you agree that the Palestinians in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip do not have the vote?
Yeah, they're under occupation.
They're under illegal occupation. So, and the Israelis that are living in the West Bank have the vote. The other point is this.
Right. Their illegal settlements have the vote.
Is that equal to you or not?
No, I didn't say it's an equal society. I said, but what I'm saying is, though, here's the thing.
So how can you say if it's not an equal society, how can you justify it? Because the main point, the core of the issue, which I want to
settlements. Do you want me to condemn the settlements? I'm against the settlements. There shouldn't be. I don't feel like, frankly, I feel like it should be a U.S. law. If something's from the settlements, you should label it as from the settlements, because that's not from Israel. Like I don't want to buy.
But the West Bank,
Ariel, I don't want to buy
and
anything.
The Gaza Strip, in terms of international law, are viewed as Israeli occupied land, so it's illegal.
Right. But and the Golan Heights, right?
But the main, and the Golan Heights, of course. But the main point is that
over
80%. How do we reconcile
Was it an illegal occupation when Jordan owned the West Bank and Egypt owned the Gaza Strip? Was there a liberation movement?
Well, the situation was slightly.
No, I'm sorry. You can't say yes or no, though.
No. It was
no,
happening.
But, I mean, there was no intifada against the Jordanians, right?
And I don't support. By the way, I don't support the Jordanian.
And here's the thing. By the way, the Egyptians are at Rafah. They could allow the supplies to come in.
Hold on, I don't support.
The Jordanians.
By the way, I was not a supporter. Gamal Abdel Nasser was brutal. He was brutal. No one denies that. He was brutal in his torture of Said Qutb, and nobody denies that. Nobody denies that Egypt was not the best player. Neither was Jordan. The reality of is this: how do you justify? I want to ask you a legitimate question. How do you justify the fact that over 80% of the land within Israel, once owned by Palestinians, has been confiscated, and that 93% of Israel's land can only be leased or owned by Jews or Jewish agencies?
For sure.
That's the core of the issue. How do you explain that disparity in equality? I mean, and do you support that? Because if you support Israel, you'd be supporting that.
Okay, but I don't support that. But what I'm saying is, though, maybe
that's what Israel stands for.
Maybe,
but that is the makeup of Israel. You can't. That is what Israel's all about. That's the core of the issue. Leaving aside the 20 laws that B'Tselem have mentioned that specifically provide for unequal rights and obligations based on what Israel's called nationality, which in Israel is defined as a basis of religion, and by virtue of that, they exclude the Palestinians. The core of the issue is that, the core of the aspect is that 80% of the land, which is now Israel, within Israel, is owned by Palestinians. That's been confiscated, and 93% of that particular land can be leased only by Jews, notwithstanding the fact that any Palestinian around the world cannot come back to Israel or stay there.
Okay, so here's the thing. If we sign a peace deal and we give us their land and they take their land, then you don't have an occupation of the West Bank anymore, right? Then they can build and all that.
An American Jew or South African. Well, what do you say about a South African Jew, a South African born in South Africa, that can go to Israel and can immediately attain Israeli citizenship? But a Palestinian, but a Palestinian whose father and grandparents were kicked out is not allowed there.
I'm so glad you brought this up, because this actually brings us to the core of the problem, right? So after World War II, there were so many transfers of population. For example, being from India, the so many people went to Pakistan. So there is no United Nations Human Rights Commission for all the Pakistani refugees who live in India. There's no Human Rights Commission for all the German refugees who live in Czechoslovakia and refugees who live in Germany. So it's like, we have perpetuated for some reason this mentality, and the mentality really is that Israel shouldn't exist. But we perpetuate this mentality that the Jews shouldn't be there, and it starts with the human rights, the United Nations refugee thing. Because there's no other group of people who were kicked out from their homeland after World War II who have a perpetual refugee status, do they? So first we create this perpetual.
Sorry, I need to ask you. You said no people that have been kicked out since World War II that have a perpetual refugee status. The Palestinians do. It's a Palestinian.
No other, I said.
Yeah, it's a Palestinians. They are the only people in the world that have a perpetual refugee status.
So here's the thing. How come we don't do that for Greeks who were kicked out of Turkey, or Turks who were kicked out of Greece, or Muslims who were kicked out of India, and Hindus who were kicked out of Pakistan, and Germans who were kicked out of Czechoslovakia, and Czechs who were kicked out of Germany?
I'll tell you why. Because Turks and Greeks can theoretically go back to the countries where they were kicked out, but Palestinians cannot. That's the distinction.
That's the thing.
in terms of the absentee property law, in terms of the absentee property law of 1950, any Palestinian that had his forefather or ancestor or grandfather kicked out of Palestinian land in areas which are now Tel Aviv and Hebron and even the kibbutz Be'eri, they are not allowed to go back, even though their grandparents were kicked out. But a Polish Jew or a South African Jew that was Dutch or French or German that had absolutely no physical genealogical lineage to the land of Israel can basically go there by virtue of the fact that they claim to be Jewish. Now, that in itself is inherently systematically discriminatory.
Look, there's only like 6 million of them. Okay, like I mean, it's so marginally few. You know what I actually think? Because for example, unfortunately, right, the fundamentalism that I used to support, they've driven out the Yazidis, they've driven out the Manichaeans, Mandeans. The Middle East is being purged of ethnic minorities, right? So what Israel should actually do is just take the Yazidis and stuff in, because you're right.
Do you know which is the largest Jewish minority in the Middle East? Do you know which is where is the largest outside Israel? Where is the largest Jewish minority outside Israel where they are given equal rights? Do you know where?
Outside Israel,
you know where?
Middle East.
Outside in the Middle East, do you know where is the largest Jewish minority? It's Islamic Republic of Iran. Do you know that in Iran, even Sunni Muslims are
they never
in Iran. No,
they're
Sunni
represented
Muslims,
in the parliament, but they're like 1 or 2%, one or two members.
But the point I'm saying is that if there is this idea about Jews being a victim mentality, Israel is the only country in the Middle East that is basically creating an entire knife edge for the entire region. But the problem I've got is that which you're not getting across.
So the first thing we do is we create these people and we say that somehow nobody else can people can't. Well, we're telling the refugees from the 48 war, right, that they can't, that they somehow will have a refugee status that gives them the right to go back, even though other dispossessed groups don't have that right. Okay, that's my point.
Which other dispossessed groups in the world don't have the right to go back to their land?
I would say
you don't have a single one. No, Anam, this is the important point. Which other dispossessed group does not have a right to go back to the land than the Palestinians?
I mentioned all the countries in World War II that had population transfers. But here's the thing.
No, but they can still go back.
We're talking about history. You're saying they have a country to settle into, and the Palestinian refugees don't have a country to settle into. Okay, that's a valid point. But if we create a state of Palestine, then would you say they lost their right of return, or are you insistent that they should go back?
Okay, here's my problem. Here's the problem that I want you to address. You've got archaic laws like the emergency law of 1949, the absentee property law of 1950, the land acquisition law of 1953, and what those laws did is they permitted and still permit up to this day, and increasingly by the number, the confiscation of more than 1 million acres of land owned by 18,000 Palestinian refugees who were expelled from their home during the Israeli creation in 48, and no compensation was given to them, to the owners, who were also prevented from returning. And the Jewish National Fund is prohibited by law from selling that same stolen land in Israel to non-Jews. Once the land is acquired by the Jewish National Fund,
they play a lot of games.
Alienated in any way. I'm asking you as a Muslim, how do you support this? How do you support?
I don't support occupation, but what I'm saying is though.
But this is what you say. You don't support occupation, but this is what Israel is based upon. That's why I'm saying it doesn't have a right to exist.
So
just like apartheid, South Africa has no right to exist, Israel has no right to exist.
I mean, but here's the thing: we're dealing with a country that's been there for 60 years. So you can say that all you want, but the thing is that this is the fact of the reality: is that they're there. They've been there for 4, 5, 6, 7 generations, and they're not going anywhere else. So these are the people we have to deal with. I would like to settle with these people, so we can stop.
But here's the other point. Here's the other problem you've got. Anam, here's the other problem.
Okay, you want talking points. You want like moral victory, but like they're there.
I'm gobsmacked in terms of how you, for example, cannot even see something clear. I mean, I'll give you one example.
I know. I'm just saying though, you've been in the game as long as you have, and you still think that country doesn't have a right to exist. It's shocking. It's shocking because it's like they are the only power on the ground. Like we were talking about before, even the PA and Hamas, they're not even in charge of those territories. Like this is the power.
The Jews are the only power in the land. We agree on that.
What I'm saying is, what I'm saying is though, if there's going to be a negotiation and the settlement, that's who we're dealing with. and you're saying they don't have a right to
you
exist.
agree that we
So
need
you're
to
living in
disband
fantasy. You're living in pure fantasy.
Sorry, I'm making pure fantasy.
You're living in pure fantasy if you think Israel doesn't have a right to exist.
In what sense?
I don't understand how you can be in the game and say Israel doesn't have a right to exist.
No, I'm saying, but let me qualify the point. Let me qualify the point.
How do they not have a country?
No, but Anam, you're missing the point I'm making. When I say Israel has no right to exist. No, Anam, hear me out. When I say Israel has no right to exist, I'm not making it as a point that this is going to happen, that it will cease to exist. I'm making the same moral argument that one would make when one made the argument that apartheid South Africa had no right to exist and Nazi Germany had no right to exist. The problem that you've got here is that whilst Nazi Germany and apartheid South Africa are now universally viewed as pariahs, you still got people out there that want to make some sort of moral justification for the last remaining.
The reason they're not a pariah is because there was a 1948 partition. Like many other countries, there was a partition. Yeah. You stay there, we stay here. Nobody followed that partition.
And did Israel accept the partition? Did Israel accept the partition?
They accepted the notion of that state and this state.
No. The UN partition basically apportioned the land of, I think, 56% to the Israelis and about
that was the aftermath of the war.
That
was the aftermath of the war.
Israelis on their own. Sorry,
okay, but again, not living in fantasy. We're dealing with the 67 borders now. We can't go back to the 48 borders. I know you wish we could go back to the 48 borders.
You're a decent guy.
We're talking about 1967.
You're a decent guy. Would you sublet your land or your house, if you had a property, would you sublet it to other people who want to basically lease from you? Would you sublet?
Okay, I mean, look, you might.
I'm saying this is a problem. You know why it's significant? Because when it was discovered that some Jews were subletting land to the Palestinians, that they were subletting in violation of the absentee property law and the emergency law, the Israeli regime, by its own definition, applied and passed the agricultural settlement law in 67 during the 67 war, which prohibited by virtue of imprisonment, by threat of imprisonment, the subleasing of land without the authority of the Minister of Agriculture. And the Minister of Agriculture in Israel made it clear that if you were to sublease land, it would do away with the exclusive Jewish characteristics of a state. This is a state that is inherently based on discrimination, based on religion and ethnicity. It's an ethnocentric neo-fascist state. How can you support a neo-fascist state? That's my question. As a Muslim, how can you support a neo-fascist state in the 21st century? Would you support Nazi Germany? Would you support apartheid South Africa? No. So why would you then support apartheid Israel when it applies on principles which were even worse than apartheid South Africa?
Okay, so there's a land grab going on, but what I'm saying to you is the land grab would end. No, if we end the occupation, the land grab doesn't matter because we have a state and they have a state, and you're the one here saying that we have it shouldn't exist, and then we should go back to the 48 Appeal Commission.
Hold on, how will we have a state? Let's assume the land grab. Let's assume the land grab stops now. How will we have a state by virtue of the fact that the West Bank is already fragmented and Gaza is decimated? They're saying that it will take approximately 50 years to get Gaza up and running. How can you even talk about two states now, when the West Bank is fragmented by about 800,000 Israeli settlers who have built the apartheid wall, where on some roads Palestinian citizens cannot even walk, their children can't even go to school there. They can't even go on the
here's
right.
The answer.
That.
Okay. So I mean, I only got a sentence out before you got me. Okay. So I want to give you a little bit of context so Israel's legal games of gobbling land, East Jerusalem, it's all in the books, right? But what I'm saying, but I'm telling you, Israel would even give up East Jerusalem if you could stop the violence. And so here's the thing: after you gave permanent refugees, I'm sorry, if I could respond. So
okay, but the violence is coming from the Israelis. You're making so many points. The violence is coming from the Israelis, not the Palestinians. The Palestinian resistance is legitimate. I mean, what's the problem with people in terms of international law?
Okay, go ahead. But here's my thing: the entire the PA, the PLO, it was founded upon being a secular opposition to the existence of Israel. So it's like the same thing, that there's no way we could ever have peace with this country. The October, and also the other funny thing they were doing was they really wanted to be the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. That's the only reason they signed the agreement, because they needed that sole legitimate representative part. So what I'm saying is, though, every time between this between this, you have the UN human rights, the Refugee Commission, which creates a perpetual refugee status. So there's no way anybody wants to resettle these people or give them a life like everybody else has been resettled in other countries. But then
why not? Why not?
Then you have, I'm just saying, Greeks did okay. Pakistanis did okay. The people who fled from Bangladesh did okay. Then
but can you go back to Bangladesh? You can't go back to Bangladesh and Pakistan. A Palestinian can't go back to Israel.
They can't go back to India. They can't go back to India. They can't go back to Czechoslovakia. So,
but by choice, the Pakistanis basically agreed on. By choice, the Pakistanis basically.
The choice is funny because they told us in 6 weeks there was going to be a partition, and then people didn't know what was going to happen. There was all kinds of violence and riots and stuff like that. There's a lot of intimidation that goes on too. You don't need to actually like kill somebody to get them to flee. You just tell them to get out. Or else.
So you don't recognize the fact that Israel's an apartheid state?
So what I'm saying, no, because what I'm saying, they have representation for the Arabs who do live in Israel. They're an occupation
but that's
state.
false. That is false, basically.
There's 20% of the parties.
That is false also, even within Israel. I want to basically...
The PLO represents secular opposition to Israel's existence. Hamas represents... religious.
Hold on a second. I'm going to let you speak. I don't want you to go, but I want to catch you because there's so many other things you're saying. You made the point, which is also made by many people, that Israel cannot be an apartheid state because there are political parties within Israel who are Palestinian, who are political, they're judges within the Israeli court. That dispels the notion of apartheid. The problem that you've got is that there's a range of laws, even now, similar to apartheid South Africa, when you had black magistrates and judges, where there was a curtailing of the freedom of political participation and association. For example, if you look at Article 9 of the Basic Law, and I'll just basically point out the Knesset and the law of political parties, it makes it illegal for a political party to challenge the declaration that Israel is a Jewish democratic state. So, for example, if you look at the the Tal party and the Balad party, they were Palestinian parties. They demanded that Israel becomes a state for all their citizens. These politicians have been threatened with banning by even the Israeli Center Elections Committee based on the particular laws. You've had Arab politicians within Israel that have had their homes basically invaded. It is similar, in fact, identical to the tricameral system in apartheid South Africa. In apartheid South Africa, we had a black parliament and we had an Indian parliament, and Indian education and black education, where Indian and colored political participation was conditional on politicians not challenging the apartheid state in any way. So you had black and Indian politicians in apartheid South Africa. Similar in Israel, you've got Palestinian politicians in the Israeli administrative Knesset and judges as well, provided they do not challenge the apartheid nature of the Israeli state in the occupied territories in the West Bank. And if, for example, they call for a democratic state where everybody has a single vote, then they could have their political participation relinquished, they could be suspended. And of course, you've got, the citizenship law that Palestinian citizens of Israel who marry, for example, a Palestinian in the West Bank or the Gaza Strip has to move to the occupied territories and live apart with spouse.
That is a fact in your
laws
favor.
are basically enshrined in terms of which they are basically, their laws are essentially, relinquished. Their rights are linked with. How can you support
this? It's an ethnocentric state. For sure. It's an ethnocentric state, but what I'm saying is, though, I think
how can you support it? As an ethnocentric state, you agree, and we're on the same level. How can you support that?
Okay, so the fact is, so many states are basically based on their, nations are usually ethnicities. It's kind of hard to rough out, but the thing is, though, here's the thing. They are born. There's like only 6 million of them. I mean, like there's more like there. It's such a small. I mean, actually 12 million.
Why? Why are they only 6 million? So, why?
But what I'm saying is though, the reason they have these ethnocentric laws is because they feel demographically threatened. They were demographically threatened.
By who?
History has shown that there's repeated purges of the Jews.
By who? By who? By the white man, by Europeans. You agree with me? Not the Muslims.
Yes and no. Yes and no. But what I'm saying is, though, there's also been riots in Muslim countries. The 29.
But you're talking about the riots in the 1920s. I'm saying historically speaking,
they continue. They were every.
No. Historically speaking, the zenith of Jewish civilization has been when? The zenith of Jewish civilization has paralleled the zenith of Islamic civilization. So you've got Maimonides, Rambam, and many of these other figures within Jewish Islamic history that have served within the Islamic body politic. They held a high status in Islamic society. When the Christians were persecuting them, the Jews ran to Muslim countries for help, and the Muslims opened up their arms with
Look, there were sultans who forced people to convert. You're saying, I mean, it's up and down. There were sultans who forced people to convert. There were there's lots of ways you can pressure people or kick them out. But what I'm saying is, though, look. Here's why, you know, look, it's a real thing, right? We are modern people. We're talking about ethnocentrism and how that is like we don't value that today, right? But in some way, right, all countries were built on a population purge, right? I mean,
historically speaking, I agree.
Right? And so after World War II, humanity kind of said, you know, we're not gonna genocide each other anymore, right? I mean, that's kind of the agreement, right? Like, because before it used to be kind of okay to like pick on the ethnic minorities or, you know, religious minorities. So, but now, but here's the thing, unfortunately, so these people, they're survivors of a centuries of persecution, and that's why they're a little bit like, okay, we're not going to allow the Arab to marry the Jew. And I agree, that's undemocratic, and that law should not be. That's not part of the democratic society, which is an argument in your favor. But what I'm saying is, though, the fact that you can have an Arab list of ministers who can decide an Israeli government is actually shows that they're just playing by the parliamentary rules. Sure, there's all kinds of laws about land grabbing. There's laws about marriages. I know you don't like the right of return.
Anam, hold on, one thing.
But they have historical things going on.
No, but we're running out of time, so and there's other people that want to come on. But I want to continue this discussion with you, and then we have to bring it to an end.
Right.
Here's my issue here. I understand the historical narrative and the historical background, and it's not the Palestinian fault. But here's the problem that I've got. You know, the South African legal government, legal team, some years back, under I think it was Judge Richard Goldstone, compiled a report. And the issue which I want to ask you and question you is this: is that when you have a situation, and I'm trying to ask from an honest point, and hear me out before you respond, where you have a situation where a state, any state, and let's talk about a generic state, codifies into law a preferred identity and then establishes laws that grants preferential legal status, hear me out, and material privileges to the preferred group on the basis of the identity, was discriminating against the non-preferred group on the basis of the inferior status afforded to them. And then you have a situation that Israel would do that by categorizing an entire population under certain ethnic categories. But beyond that, goes into a situation whereby they segregate the population into a geographic area based on the identity, and the favored identity receives preferential access to land, water, other resources, government benefits. And if those who are discriminated protest or want to resist, then they are bombed and destroyed and have their women raped. How can you support such a regime which is inherently based and established on this basic principle? That's what I can't get my head around. And I'm asking you as a Muslim, because from an Islamic point of view, we stand up for justice. And when we see a state based and continuing on inherent injustice, we understand the injustice of the past. But in 2024, today, we're talking about continuing injustice, leaving aside the genocide that is taking place before our very eyes. How do you reconcile it within your mind as a Muslim that you can go ahead and support such evil? That's my question that I have.
So, Anam, I'm going to give you like a minute or 30 seconds or so if you want to respond to that.
We can have you again, Anam, for a longer discussion.
Yeah, I've sent you my email. Please email me. Yeah, please email me, and we can plan a timed discussion so everybody's given ample time.
Sure,
and you can bring your resources.
And we can basically go on all these issues so we can have a back and forth on all those points. Yeah.
Okay, right. So, look, I guess I would say this, right, brother?
It's a difficult question. And no, it's a difficult question for you to answer.
No, you know, I'm surprised. I'm in this situation. Believe me, like 14-year-old me. But here's, I will tell you this, right, brother. So I think, look, they have been. Okay, Let me first agree with what you said, okay? Because first, are we, you know, we live on the same planet, we observe the same facts, you know, we read the same histories and newspapers, so we can't be this far apart, you know, that as we appear, right? So I will tell you this is how my brain makes it work, okay? I remember, you know, Rabin, you know, and in fact, even every liberal labor Israeli minister, prime minister, they've expanded the settlements from Barak, Rabin, Perez, and so on.
Yeah.
So you're right. You know, it's built upon land grabbing and treating, you know, their minority as second-class citizens, for sure. Okay. And I even remember during the height of the Intifada, General Rabin, right, or he was in charge of he was defense minister or something. He would order the Israeli soldiers to break the arms and legs of the Palestinian children when they were throwing rocks, right? So, like, look, and by the way, Rabin was prime minister during the 80s and the 70s, right? So it's like he has a history of to be measured. So he was never like, when we see him as a dove, right? We kind of, when you look at the person himself, he's actually like a very, like, maybe we should wonder what dove means, right? And on the same sense, right, the more I read about Sharon, right, it's like, well, we think he's so, you know, he's the epitome of evil, but in some ways, like, the way, you know, the hardest, you know, okay, so let me answer your question, because you said we're pressed on time and everything. So I feel like this, like, you know, even a leader like Rabin, who we know is problematic, right? That's the guy whose hand you have to shake if you're going to get out of this, and it's never been worse. Like, you know, I'm only 38 years old, 37 years old, but it's never been worse to be in this conflict. And especially for Palestinians.
There's not much age between the two of us here. So we've both been around.
Hang on, we're going to finish off the show. We got Brother Hassan. He's been waiting patiently.
We'll have a longer chat with you and in the future, Brother Anam.
Yeah. I'm going to send you an email. Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah, I've gave you my email address. You can contact me. Hassan, what would you like to share, brother?
Yes, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What I've noticed, what this gentleman has been talking about, I'm a little confused as to how he's coming to this conclusion. He said that we read the same history. We're not too far apart in age either, Mr. Anam. I'm surprised how you could come to that conclusion, because quite frankly, when you tell me about, when you're talking about, let's say, forced conversions by Muslims, I mean, that's a topic I'd love to get into, but this is not the stage or platform for that. I would, however, say that your views are, with all due respect, it seems like they're warped. It seems like they're warped by a narrative provided to you by a certain segment. Now, you can have your lens, but is that really the right lens to have? That's my question to you.
No, I think I tried to be fair, and, you know, I didn't defend the most egregious things, and I specifically said I don't support Netanyahu, I don't support the occupation, I don't support settlements. So what I'm trying to do is, you know, what I'm trying to do is, well, anyway, I spoke a lot, so you just joined us, Brother Hassan. Go ahead.
Well, I think the point he's making is that in light of the fact that you don't support Netanyahu, you don't support occupation, you don't support the egregious crimes, and quite rightly you pointed out, you identified that Rabin, which was viewed as a peacemaker in the 90s, was involved in the first Intifada in telling the Israeli soldiers to destroy and break, and we saw images of breaking their bones of the Palestinians in cold blood and killing them and killing their women. Now, my point is, I think the question he's trying to reconcile, and which we are trying to reconcile, that whilst on the one hand, you're identifying that it is inherently problematic, this regime and the state is inherently problematic, and that it is ideologically based on a certain premise and a narrative, which is also based on the acquisition of land, because that's what Zionism basically stands on. How is it that on the one hand, you recognize that as problematic, and on the other hand, you continue to support the state of Israel? I mean, I think that's what people are having difficulty in trying to reconcile with your position. I mean, that's what it's a bit confusing, because when you see injustice, and on the one hand, you recognize injustice, which we've clearly pointed out. I mean, the facts which we see both throughout the world, universally now, are quite clear before our very eyes. But then what are you supporting? I mean, that's a question. Because if something is inherently based on its formation on apartheid, like, for example, if I were to say analogously, I support apartheid South Africa during the heights of the apartheid regime, but I don't support apartheid. What am I saying? And it appears to me that that is your position. I mean, that's a position so we are confused, or at least I think the viewers of myself and Brother Muhammad and the Brother Hassan is confused that you appear to be in some sort of a conundrum, or at least probably having what Piers Morgan would say, a kind of a moral dilemma similar to him. This is the problem. I mean, we must chat. I mean, we've given you some time. I just want to explore the issues with you. I'm not condemning you. I just want to, converse with you and try to understand what is basically motivating you.
I'll tell you, that's a good question, Yusuf, and I think we can continue this, and hopefully the people in the chat can wait for it. And that's a beautiful way to end the stream. Well, coming to the end of the stream, we can. Anam, thank you for joining us, and I have left an email address in the private chat. Please send me an email. It'll take me a couple of days to respond, but I'll definitely respond, and we can plan a proper time discussion. And I'm sure the audience will be waiting to hear your point of view, because even from day one, I was still kind of figuring out your position. And that's why normally when people make a live stream, they start cutting and making short segments of we had a Muslim Zionist come on or whatever. I haven't done any of that because I haven't prejudged you. so you know.
we haven't prejudged you at all. We haven't prejudged you. We just want to understand you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed.
So Anam, thank you for joining us, and hopefully, inshallah, I'll email you, and we'll plan a beautiful discussion and a formal kind of like it's going to turn out to be a debate. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but we can definitely do something. Please send me an image or something that I can use for your thumbnail, and we'll move forward with that. Jazakumullah khair.
Indeed.
Thank you for joining us. Hassan, thank you, brother, also for joining us. I know you came on late, but I'm sure everybody will be licking their lips and rubbing their hands together for this upcoming, inshallah, discussion with Yusuf and Anam, because I still don't understand his stance. I'm a bit confused.
I'm confused myself, just like you.
To be honest, I first thought he might have been an Arab Christian Zionist, but now after hearing him, I'm extremely confused. I don't know what his position is or what his ideals are.
Well, you say that.
I think I need to paracetamol.
When hindsight came on, she was, favoring, one side, and after she left the show, she seemed quite distraught. So there is a possibility for everybody to change, and we have to try our best. Myself and Brother Yusuf have been doing this.
She left crying, Mohammed.
She ended up, as I'm saying, she's quite distraught. So, brothers and sisters, the shows that we're having and what we're doing, they are having a minimum effect on people, and we need to continue promoting these streams because here in the West, especially in the UK, the situation regarding Gaza is quite limited. The main media outlets are really restricting the narrative, and also people are being arrested and detained for speaking up and being vocal regarding the genocide in Palestine. Brother Hassan, final words to you, and then Brother Yusuf can wrap the show up. Go ahead, Brother Hassan.
Yes. The main thing is to remember that our brethren, Muslims, are dying in Palestine, and no one's doing a thing yet except speaking. But inshallah, in the time to come, people will, I hope, do more than just speak. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Sorry, Yusuf, I just wanted to give this percentage. So far, 40,000 people have been martyred and murdered in Gaza. 10,000 are still under the rubble. The 40,000 that have been confirmed martyred or murdered, 18.4% are women. And I really want you to grasp that percentage of children out of the 40,000. 33% are children that have been martyred and murdered by the IDF forces. And I really wanted to reflect on that. And even today, the reports are coming in that hospitals are being bombed right now as we speak. I'm just going to the website, and many of the hospitals have to turn away patients. Dialysis patients have been told to return back to wherever they are staying because they cannot provide the services anymore to them. And it's heartbreaking, really is. And like I said, Brother Yusuf is a bit more tougher than me. Myself, I can't deal watching this images of babies and children and innocent people being bandaged up and so forth. I can't deal with it, even though I served in the military and I saw my first-hand dealings with warfare, and I've been involved in many aspects of warfare. And when I come to see young children and the aspects, a holistic picture of these young children, their parents, and so forth, I cannot deal with it. I struggle to deal with it. But Brother Yusuf, you are tougher than me. MashaAllah, may Allah protect and preserve you. Final words to you before we wrap the show up.
Yeah, and we will continue having these streams despite people don't know what's happening behind the scenes, the threats that we've got, the legal challenges that I'm facing, and some of the strikes that we've been getting on YouTube. It's important that we share this. The Palestinian situation, the plight of the Palestinian, there's a verse in Surah Baqarah, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ista'inu bis-sabri was-salah, inna Allaha ma'as sabirin, that, O believers, seek comfort, seek patience in patience and in salah. Allah is truly with those who are patient. And if you look at the plight of the Palestinians over the past 9 months, one can basically make the claim that verse applies to them 100%. Allah is indeed truly with them, that despite their suffering, despite their anguish, despite the fact that these Muslim governments have let them down, that the world has forgotten about them, they are resilient. And that's why Israel will never destroy them. That's why young teenage boys in sandals can take out these massive Israeli armament tanks, which are run by cowards. And so long as they have that taqwa, that God consciousness within them, they can never lose. And that's what we should hold hope in. But at the same time, we need to make the world aware. And that's why we show these images that you see out there. We need to, of course, remember Allah bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub, that in the remembrance of Allah, your hearts find comfort. We need to do that regularly, but do that on a practical level as well. When we see injustice, you speak out against it if you can't do anything physically for it. And that's the least that we can basically do in these streams and other streams. So we will continue updating the public. We will continue sharing these Israeli war crimes, despite how much you may hate us and abuse us in the side chat and want to insult us and say the most vulgar and vile things about Islam and the Quran and Allah and His Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We will continue speaking out and exposing injustice. Let you feel that pain, because you're only doing that. You're only engaging in that kind of verbal abuse towards us because you've got no argument. And the truth pierces the inner core of your soul. The truth exposes the satanic elements within your hearts. And that's why you are resorted to such kinds of vulgarity on a weekly basis when we come and show you and present you the truth and expose the falsehood and the ideology that underpins your belief system. So till next time, Brother Muhammad, let's continue these discussions and let's once again make dua for each other, supplicate for the blessings of Allah on all of us, all the brothers out there and sisters, and indeed people out there. Share the stream as widely as possible on your social media outlets. I'm not on some of them, TikTok, WhatsApp, or whatever media outlets are. Please try and share them, because there is an incentive and an initiative by lots of people out there. I know in South Africa personally that are trying to shut these streams down. So till next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So just a quick reminder before we close the stream for today, you can get me on Twitch. I've got an account on Twitch, and top left-hand corner, the green icon is for Rumble, Abu SHUAIB. And if you want to get hold of me or message me for some discussions, planned chats, you can get me on X or Twitter, AbuHams44, and also on TikTok at covff.channel. So I'm not much of a TikTok fan, but I hardly use it, but you can message me on there. I would really appreciate that. Once again, I'd like to thank Brother Yusuf, the co-host, and of course Yusuf has his own YouTube channel called the South African Debate Initiative. Sister, can you just put it in the chat so I can highlight it? I would really appreciate it. Ahmed Rahman, who always gets mistaken for a brother. So if you can just, so sister, thank you for posting that. Thank you, sister. Jazakumullah khair. So please go to Brother Yusuf's channel, subscribe, like, and share, and let's get this ball rolling and this snowball effect. Just continue to promote the situation, what's happening in Palestine, and to our brothers and sisters in Gaza and the West Bank. Brother Hassan, Jazakumullah khair, Habibi, for joining me. Brother Yusuf, thank you once again, and may Allah bless you, brother. This is your brother Muhammad from CovFF. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.